So let's go to Tay for a second, talk about California for a minute. AB 2188 was passed, and when it was passed, there was an article in Sacramento Bee where the author of the bill, or at least the sponsor of the bill, I don't know that he wrote it, but he basically said, this is, I'm paraphrasing, so I apologize to the legislator if I don't get this exactly right, but he basically said, this will end.
Bill.
What's that, Tay?
Don't ever apologize to legislators.
Good point, good point. Because he basically said this ends testing for marijuana in the state of California. But the way the bill is written, or now the law, doesn't really say that. Basically, it prohibits testing for using methods that detect the metabolite of a drug, but there are other drug testing methods. But if an employer in California, or Washington for that matter, which passed a similar law that would prohibit it, testing with urine, for example, for pre-employment screening, if an employer in one of those states or anywhere in the country decides, listen, it's not worth the trouble, we're going to remove marijuana from our panel, but we still want to be able to identify impairment, you know, one, how would you address that issue of, you know, whether you know, where marijuana plays into this issue, and then for those companies that are just a little bit skittish about testing for marijuana, they want a different option. How would you approach that if you were, say, for example, writing their drug-free workplace policy? We won't say drug testing.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a policy-based standpoint, what I would say within the actual text of the policy is pretty generic language that says, and I'm paraphrasing, you can't be impaired at work, can't be under the influence of marijuana or anything. So just period, you can't be impaired at work, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's pretty simplistic from a policy-based standpoint. And then you've got the foundational document that says you can't be impaired at work. And then you've got the, if you're using the Gaize technology, you're implementing a test, right, that doesn't test for metabolites, doesn't test for any levels of anything within the body like a traditional drug test, and what, is prohibited under the California AB2188 law. And so in that scenario, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create the baseline policy that says you can't be impaired at work. And then to Ken's point and to Linda's point earlier, you're creating at that point the body of evidence that indicates that, hey, you were impaired at work. And because you were impaired at work, and there is no explanation that you can provide that you weren't impaired at work, then you're violating the policy. The policy says you can't be impaired at work, and you are impaired. And so I know that's a very long answer to my very simple and straightforward short answer for the policy, but for policy reasons, I just say you can't be impaired at work. And then you do the legwork to show why the person wants to.